Today's guest is Sharon Milliman. Now, Sharon has had 4 near-death experiences, and she has been struck by lightning 4 times. She was featured on the Dr. Oz show and the National Geographic Channel. She's also the author of 3 books, A Song in the Wind, a near-death experience, The Whispers in the Wind, a poetic journey of the soul, and A Rose from Heaven. Sharon, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today and joining me on the podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
All right, my audience is really into near-death experiences. So can we start on the day of your first one at age 13 and tell us what happened?
I was taking swimming lessons at the Y here in the town that I live in, and the instructor wanted me to dive headfirst like this into the 10-foot section of the pool. And I watched all the other kids do it, and they did fine, but I was scared, and I couldn't do it. And he told me, he said, well, you're either going to do this dive or I'm going to throw you in. And so he grabbed me and threw me in, and I panicked and took in a ton of water, and it didn't take but a couple minutes, and I was on the bottom.
Wow.
And it was so strange because time seemed to just slow way down or basically stop. But while I'm laying on the bottom of the 10-foot section of the pool, I could see myself under the water. I could see the top of the water rippling like this, and I could hear everybody screaming around the pool. And I could see my mom. She was in the balcony on the opposite end, the 3-foot section where all the parents were sitting. And she was leaning over the banister. Her face was like right here in my, this close. And she was just horror-filled look on her face. And then I heard there was a woman lifeguard who was taking care of the little children in the 3-foot section, and I heard her scream at my instructor. She said, Bob, go in and get her. And I looked at him, and he was frozen. He couldn't move. And all the while, all of this stuff was going on, I'm under 10 feet of water, and there was this brilliant light. And at first I thought it was a light bulb. And I kept thinking, well, what's a light bulb doing in the pool? That's kind of dangerous. But this light, it was brilliant, yet it didn't hurt my eyes. And it was so soft. And it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know if I was going up to it or it was coming down to me, but it was like this close to me. And I heard what sounded like a metal door slam, and it echoed. And then I felt this horrific pain, and I was coughing up water. And what had happened was the lifeguard that was taking care of the middle-aged kids in the 5-foot section of the pool, he had jumped in to save me, and he was doing CPR. And he got me over to the side of the pool, and they got me out. And all I remember is everybody's feet. There was all these legs and feet standing around me. And then my mom, I could see my mom's face. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know what had happened. Mm-hmm. And we never really talked about it afterwards. I think my mom was just so terrified that we never talked about it. And I didn't know what that was. Nobody explained anything to me. I had no idea what had happened. Mm-hmm. But that light was so beautiful, and I wasn't cold. I wasn't scared. I felt no pain at all. And except for the few moments of terror, when you're struggling and you're not, you're going to go down, and you do. I always figured that people who drowned would be cold, mm-hmm. but I wasn't cold. Mm. And I felt this peace. It was just so peaceful. And the love that came out of that light was just unreal. It was not a bad experience.
I find it very interesting that you said that you heard this sound like a door shutting or slamming. I've never heard that before. I wonder what do you think that was?
I think that was my soul going back into my body. And it was like a metal door slamming, and it echoed. It was an echo sound. It was loud. And I think that was just me going back in my body.
Yeah. Maybe it could have been that with the combination of was it an indoor pool or an outdoor pool?
It was an indoor pool.
Yeah. You know how it's kind of echoey in there in some of the places? Kind of very, I guess they'd say a lot of reverb. Maybe that kind of, maybe that had some kind of effect to it. But yeah, that was, I bet Bob lost his job over that.
I wondered that. I still wonder that, but I never, ever went back after that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If he lost his job, he probably needed to.
Yeah. Did you continue swimming after that, or
no.
you were just too afraid to go in the water?
Yeah. Even if I take a shower and the water gets on my face, I can't breathe. Wow. So I have to, cover my face, to just wash my hair. I couldn't do this.
Oh, very interesting.
And if I go swimming at the beach, it's up to the knees only, and that's it. And I have to be able to touch the bottom, or I don't get in the water.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah. So after that happened, many years until your next near-death experience, was anything paranormal or anything different happen to you, or is that just kind of the only one incident thing, and then nothing really happened until later?
Actually, when I was 15, something happened. I used to, something was happening in my life that should never happen to a child. And when I went to an adult about it, they didn't believe me. They told me it was all in my head. So I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was crazy. I had planned to commit suicide, but I didn't tell anybody. I was singing in the youth choir at the time, and it was a Good Friday, and the whole youth choir went to this neighboring church, and I was sitting in the back, and like it had two levels, like the bottom level was like the basement level or the street level. And that's where we were all sitting and practicing for our turn to go up into the main church to sing. And as I was sitting there, it was me in the back. I was really withdrawn by this time, so I wasn't hanging out with people and stuff. So I was sitting in the back. There was two adult women in front of me, and then in front of them were the two daughters of one of the women, and then the rest of the choir was in front. And this man walks in, and he didn't use the door. He came in from, I don't know, from another room or another area in the church, and he walked up to me, and as soon as I saw him, it was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't talk. My mouth went dry. I couldn't speak. It was Jesus. And he walked up to me. He was so beautiful. And he walked up to me and he said, "Where do I go to sit?" And I was just like, I couldn't say a word. So he sat down next to me in the chair next to me, and he was just smiling. And the two women in front of me turned around, and they were telling him how to get up to the main church. And when he stood up, while they were telling him where to go to sit, he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, "What is happening to you in your life is happening. You are not crazy. I love you. I'm with you. Don't be afraid." And that blew me away, because I had never told anybody, what I was going through. And for him to say those exact words, it was like, he knew my heart. He knew, he could read my heart without me saying anything, because I didn't say anything. And when he got up, he touched with his finger the elbow of the lady that was sitting in front of us. She had arthritis so bad in her arm, she couldn't bend her arm. And she was like, oh my gosh, the pain's gone. I can move my arm. He healed her arm. And her two daughters were sitting in front, and they saw him too. Nobody else in the choir did, but me and those 4 other women. Mm. And we still talk about it today. Wow. It was amazing. He went up and he was sitting in the pews, and there was this huge stained glass window that all of the pews were in front of this window. Mm. So everybody would be sitting in front of it. And I didn't notice anybody else in the church at all. I just was singing my heart out to him. I didn't see anybody else. I had no idea that could have been filled with 100 people. I don't know. But when we got done, he told the 2 girls that he liked their singing. And we were all talking about him. Did you see Jesus? He was just sitting right in front of you. Did you see him? And nobody else saw him, just us 4. And I was like, oh my gosh, he was sitting right there. You would have had to fall over him not to see him. He was right there, but they didn't see him, just us. And it was amazing. It was just amazing.
That is amazing. What did he look like? Did he have like what you see in pictures and robes and long hair, or was he more, contemporary looking?
He had very long hair, very dark. He was dark complected. He had brown eyes. He had a short cut beard. He was wearing a white button down shirt, blue jeans, and boots.
Oh, cool.
And he was so beautiful. When he smiled, he had dimples, and it was like, oh my gosh. He was so, but it was not only was he beautiful, and he was not the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus everybody thinks of, with the hair up to here and the blue eyes. Although his eyes were very brown, and he looked like he did when he walked the earth. He was a Middle Eastern man, he dark skin, and but he was so. I want to say it was just really cool because he dressed like everybody else, and he didn't really stand out in the crowd, with the long robes and the halo and all that. It wasn't like that, but you knew that he was just, his love was and he was compassionate and caring and gentle, and his smile was just radiant. He was just radiant. It was beautiful.
Did you see like an aura coming off of him or something?
Well, I knew the second he walked in the room. It was like, oh my God, there's holiness in his room. The whole energy of the room changed. It was bright and light and airy, like it is in heaven, but we were sitting in this room, and it was just, I'd never felt energy change like that before. It was amazing. It was just, I don't know. He exudes love from every pore in his body.
It's fascinating that no one else could see him or didn't see him but y'all 4.
Just us 4. I think he did that because I was questioning myself so much. And I think that he let that happen so that there was validation that it in fact did happen, and other people saw it too. It wasn't just me, because I was questioning, when I knew things were happening and I was told no, they weren't, and that made me question myself. So I think he did that on purpose.
Before he came, were you praying to him or anything, or was he even on your mind, or he just showed up out of nowhere?
He just showed up out of nowhere. Well, I'd always had a very close relationship with Jesus. Ever since I was a little teeny girl, I loved him so much. at Easter time, I would sit and watch the movies. You eat my Easter candy, hold my little stuffed animal, and I'd sit all day long and watch the Passion movies. That was my giving back to him, I guess, or whatever. And I did that as a child, little teeny girl. But that particular day, it wasn't like, I mean, I knew we were there to sing to him, for him, because it was Good Friday. Mm-hmm. And I'll never, the song was Up to Jerusalem. So I still remember the song. But at that particular moment, I was just sitting there, not thinking of anything, just, I was kind of, like I told you, I was kind of withdrawn. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't like socializing like everybody else was doing. They were getting up and running around, and people with the instruments were tuning their instruments, and people were practicing. And I was just sitting there. Mm-hmm. And then when he walked in, it was like, mm-hmm. I just knew. I knew right away, mm-hmm. but I couldn't speak. And I think he did that on purpose too, so that I would shut my mouth and listen to what he had to say, because what he had to say was really important. Mm-hmm. And because in my mind, I was thinking, Sharon, this is your chance to ask the Lord everything you ever wanted to ask him. And you can't say a word. What's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. I think he did it on purpose.
It's almost like seeing a celebrity in real life, but it's like a celebrity plus.
I know. Yeah. It really was.
All right. So let's fast forward into your lightning strikes. When was the first time you were struck by lightning?
It was every other year. See, twice it was ball lightning, and twice it was lightning, the bolts, actually. Mm-hmm. And it was every other year. And then at 43, it was 2005, and that's when the big one came. And it was twice was ball lightning, and then twice was the lightning bolt.
I kind of have an idea of what ball lightning is, but can you explain it to me? What was that like, and what do you mean by ball lightning?
Okay, I'd never heard of it before that, the experience. But what it is we had an old Victorian home, and I guess there are little cracks between the window and the windowsill. And of course I had the big drapes up and the big, fancy curtains, and I didn't know that it was raining out. And I was sitting in the den, and I was on the computer. And all of a sudden there's this round, like fireball, about round like this. And it came through the crack between the wall and the windowsill, and it rolled across the room. And I was on the keyboard, and it hit the keyboard, and it just fried the computer, and my hands tingled all the way up to my shoulders. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like that. The second time it was every other year. So the second time it was ball lightning again, but I was sitting on the couch with the man I was married to at the time. We were watching TV. We had a big front porch, and it was connected to the living room. The front porch was here and the living room was here. So there was a window, and I guess lightning had come underneath the porch, but again, it was ball lightning that came through the window, between the window and the sill, and it rolled across the back of the couch, and it hit me in the back of the head. And I was, wow, wow. It didn't touch him. It hit me in the back of the head.
Did you sustain any injuries from either one of those strikes?
No. The first one, it made my hand, it fried the computer, and the keyboard was just charred, and my hands tingled really bad all the way up to my shoulders. But the tingling went away after a while. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't a permanent injury. And the thing in the head, it kind of of stunned me and knocked me for a loop for a little bit, but I didn't have any burns or anything.
Oh, wow. Did your house have any burns, like the windowsill or whatever, that's as it comes under the window?
No, it just went right. It just went between the cracks. It just came right through the cracks. So there wasn't any burns on the house. Now, the big lightning strike, we had a, I guess you'd call it a transformer.
Okay.
That's right in front of the house. And that thing, it just blew to smithereens. After the lightning hit me, it went underneath, passed through my body, went under the house, and hit the transformer in front of the house and just blew it to pieces. And that was the fourth lightning strike.
Oh, that's the fourth. All right. Where is the third? We're missing one.
Okay, the third, I was in the bathroom curling my hair with a curling iron, and I thought it was a truck going down the alley behind the house, but what it was it was actually thunder, but I didn't know that. And so I'm curling my hair in a storm. What happens is the lightning. It's dumb. That was a dumb thing to do.
What's the odds of the lightning striking your house?
Well, they say lightning doesn't strike twice, but that's a lie. But so I'm curling my hair, and the lightning hits the ground and travels through the cord that was plugged into the wall, which was right by the sink. And the curling iron kind of stuck to my hand. And what was really scary was there was a loud crack just before the lightning hit the ground. And we had two dogs, and the two dogs were terrified. They were climbing up on the couch and cowering, and that's how loud it was. But then, and I started screaming, oh my God, it hit me, it hit me. But I couldn't get the cord. I couldn't, the curling iron was like stuck to my hand. I couldn't, it was like,
Wow.
And then finally, I was able to get it. I don't even know what I did. I just, I dropped it or something. I don't know.
Were all four of these lightning strikes at the same house?
Yes.
Because it makes me wonder, are you the lightning magnet or is the house the lightning magnet? Which one do you think it is?
It had something to do with that house. That house had some very strange things happen in that house.
Yeah. Is there like anything really tall on the house or tall trees? Just for the general physical things that, lightning hits the tallest thing around first. So is there something like that, or?
We had our two neighbors on either side. The people on, as I'm facing you, they were on the right. They had two tall fir trees. And the people on the left had two tall oak trees in their yard. We didn't have any trees in our yard. We had just the two-stall garage, right? It was like a breezeway. You walk out of the kitchen and straight, and you're in the garage. Well, right next to the garage, there was a light pole that lit up the alleyway. I don't know if that's what it was trying to get at or what. I don't know. I mean, I have pictures of the house, and it doesn't seem like there's anything remarkable about the outside of the house. It wasn't any taller than any of the other houses. The only thing is that transformer was right in front of our house. So I don't know if it was, I don't really know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if for some reason the lightning was hitting your house. But you did mention that there was a lot of strange stuff in your house. So do you think there was maybe ghosts or beings or energies in the house that was attracting the lightning?
There definitely was. Yeah, there were ghosts in the house. I saw them. After my near-death experience, there was so many of them. It was like I had a flashing sign above my head that said, "If you're dead, come see Sharon."
Oh, wow.
Or I felt like the little boy in The Sixth Sense, you know, I was like, oh my God, I see dead people. And I would be talking to them and not realizing they were dead. I mean, we had a family friend who had died. Mm-hmm. And I knew he was dead. We were getting ready to go to his funeral. And I take my dogs out to the backyard before we go. And the guy's standing there in the backyard by the fence and he's talking to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I talked to him for, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. And then it was like, oh my gosh, you're dead. Mm-hmm. What are you talking to me for? You know, it didn't register in my head at first because he looked so healthy and so, you know, rosy cheeked and like he just stepped out of the shower. His hair was wet and he just glowed. He glowed. He was beautiful. And it didn't hit me right at first. My God, Doug, you're dead. What are you talking to me for? You know?
What did he say when you told him that?
He said, I want you to tell my wife and my mom that I'm okay, that I love them. And he had told me to make them a flowering wreath that had birds on it. Now, I don't know what that meant to them, but he was very particular. Give them each a wreath with flowers and a bird on the wreath. Now, I said, okay. So I did. I had some already made from doing a craft fair. So I just picked one out for each of them and gave them one. I don't know what that meant to him or to them.
Did they have any particular reaction when you gave it to them?
They both cried. I had told them ahead of time that, you know, when we got there, I said, I have a gift for you. I said, but this isn't from me. This is from Doug. You know, he had told me, you know, I talked to him just a little while ago and he told me to give you these wreaths, these kinds of flowers with the birds on it. So, and I remember his wife, she went to the bedroom and she was just crying, and his mom, she was just grateful. And, but nobody explained to me what those particular flowers meant and what those birds meant to them. But that's okay. That was just his message to them.
That's interesting. So on your fourth lightning strike, that's when you had your second NDE, right?
Yeah.
It sounded like you were saying that on the fourth one, it hit you first and then went to the transformer. So were you outside at the time?
I was sitting on the back concrete steps talking on the cordless phone. Okay. And it started to rain. There was this little ledge that came over the stairs from the roof. And the man I was married to had just got home from work and he was an electrician. I thought, okay, well, he would know if I would be safe or not. I figured a corded phone would probably not be good. Yeah. But I had no idea about a cordless. Yeah. He said, yeah, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Oh, well. He went in the house, and about 5 minutes after he went in the house, I hear this loud crash. And I saw the lightning bolt come out of the sky, and it hit my arm. And that phone just went flying, and it was all burnt. And I had a searing, burning, horrific pain in my arm, and it traveled across my chest. And then that's all I remember until it was like my spirit or my soul just peels up out of my body like a banana, you know. And I go into my house. I'm walking into my house, and nothing in my house was my stuff. So I go in, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm looking at the curtains on the wall or above the sink, and they weren't my curtains. And everything had this burnt yellow gold look to it. And I got confused, like, where are my curtains? Then I went into the dining room, and that furniture was not my furniture. It was like centuries old furniture. It wasn't my stuff. And I went into it was all open. So I went in from the dining room into the living room, and that furniture wasn't my stuff. And my husband wasn't in the house, and my kids had been over visiting, and they weren't in the house. And I heard this old time radio playing. It sounded like something from back in the Waltons, and I couldn't find it. I mean, there were no lights, and I couldn't find this radio. So I didn't know what was happening. I got very confused, and I started to panic. I thought, this is really weird. You know, I knew I'd been hit by lightning, but I didn't know I was dead at all. And I couldn't figure out where my stuff was. You know, this was my house. I knew how to get around in it, but I didn't know where my stuff was and whose was this stuff. And just as I was about to lose it completely, there was this huge, loving, formless presence. That's the only words I can use. And it just, the peace just totally overcame me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I felt love like I'd never felt before. And it just filled me up. And it was just like this presence had a big arm and wrapped it around me. And we started going sideways. Well, I didn't go up, I didn't go down. We went sideways through these beautiful pink and gold clouds. And we were moving at very great speed through these clouds. And at the end of the clouds, there was this beautiful garden. And it was like the most beautiful spring day, and you multiply it by 10 bazillion. 10 bazillion. It was so magnificent. The colors were so rich and vibrant. The air was sweet. The colors, I've never seen anything like it. And that was just the entrance of the garden. And these two young men stepped forward, and they were my two brothers who had died as babies, but they were fully grown men at this time, you know, like late 20s, early 30s. And they were so beautiful. They had long, curly hair, darker color than mine, but it had this color running through it. And they looked just like my dad when my dad was a young man. And we just had this wonderful family reunion. It was like, oh my gosh, I know you. I know you, you know, and it was so wonderful to see them. And they actually were the ones that told me I died. I was like, really? Okay, I can do this. This is okay. I can do this. Well, as soon as they told me that, we moved a little bit further into the garden, and that presence was still with me, and then my two brothers. And it was time for me to have my life review. And it was like a screen came down, and I was watching this. It was on an old-fashioned movie reel. And so I'm standing there, my two brothers, one on either side of me, this loving presence is behind me. And then there's a whole bunch of other people that came around. And they were like from all different time periods. And I knew them and they knew me, but I didn't know where I knew them from. And some of the people were dressed in fancy clothes, beautiful gowns, fancy suits. And some people were dressed in jeans or loungewear. You know, I don't know where they got their clothes from, but they were really nice. And another thing, too, when my brothers told me that I had died, I looked down the front of me to see if I still had a body. And I did still have a body. I could see my hair going down I could see my clothes. I still had my clothes on. And that was a good thing. I was really happy.
That would be pretty weird, being naked in heaven.
Yeah, that would not be a pretty picture at all. We wouldn't want to go there. Anyway, I noticed that I did have a body, but it was a different kind of body. It was like a light body, and it was not weighted down, heavy gravity. It was light, and for the first time in my life, I felt beautiful. I was accepted, and for me, not for and I had never felt that way on this in my life until then. But so then they were doing my life review, and I was watching it. It was a black and white movie on an old-fashioned movie reel, and it went really fast. And that loving presence moved from beside me to behind me, and then I had my two brothers and all those other people, and nobody judged me, and I didn't judge me either. I didn't know I was supposed to, and so I just watched it, and then it was over just like that. But it was everything from the time I was a baby until I was fully grown, till that moment that I died. But I when it was over, I asked my brothers, I said, something is missing. My life must have really been boring because it went so fast, and I didn't know what it was I was missing. And they just kind of grinned, and I thought, wow, you're not going to tell me? You're playing the brother card on me here, And but they never really said anything. They just laughed, And so then we went. After that was over, I heard a male voice say, "What you put into the universe will come back to you." And I knew that was God's voice, but I didn't know what he meant because I'd never heard those words before. And then I was getting like infusion of knowledge. It was like wearing a giant IV bottle attached to me, and I was being infused with all this knowledge. And it was like one aha moment after another, bam, 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 like that. And it was like, oh my gosh, you're so cool. This is so cool. He said, what you put into the universe will come back to you. And I didn't know what that meant. And then I was getting all this infused knowledge, and pretty much what it meant, this infused knowledge was like one aha moment after another. It was like bam, 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 and all this, how the universe was put together, who God is, what God is, and all that kind of stuff. And I kept saying, oh my God, you're so awesome. We human beings make everything so complicated, and you're not complicated at all. And I had such a feeling of bliss, because I had all this. Of course, when I came back, it all went away. But when I was there, it was like, wow, it was amazing. But what I learned from the words he told me was that if you put love and you put kindness and you put compassion, that's all going to come back to you. If you put stealing and lying and cheating and hate and all that, that's what's going to come back to you. You fill your soul with those things you fill your life with. So, and he also told me about, I call it the boomerang effect. What you put out goes out into the universe, spins, gains momentum, gets stronger, and then it comes back to you like a boomerang. And you don't know when it's going to hit you or how it's going to hit you or anything, but it will hit you eventually. It may not be right away, but eventually it'll come back. And so it was like, that was a big moment for me, learning that, it really does come back. And I've seen in my life since then how things can come back to you. So I choose now to be very careful. And I don't want to get hit in the head with a boomerang. So
Did you ever figure out who those other people were?
I don't know if they were relatives, or I really don't know. I just knew that I knew them and they knew me, but I don't know where I knew them from. Interesting.
Did you feel like this was your house, but with other people's stuff and different decorations?
Yeah, it was definitely my house.
Interesting.
I knew how to get around in it, but nothing in it was mine. It was almost like that lightning was powerful enough to knock me back in time or something. The time era was like 20s or 30s. Of course, I'm not old enough to have lived back in the 20s or 30s, but that's the time period that the house was in after the lightning hit me. It was very strange for a couple minutes. It seemed like it was a lot longer than that, but I'm sure that's all it was. Because I was just so, I kept looking around and like, oh my gosh, where did this stuff come from? Where's my family? And what is going on? It's almost like I was a ghost. And when I thought about it afterwards, it was like, I don't know if I didn't see any people in the house, but if there was people, did they see me? I don't know. But it was very strange.
So how did you come back?
Well, after the NDE, or I mean, I had the, you asked me how I came back from my NDE?
Like you had your life review, you had, you were giving all this knowledge. Then I guess it's kind of like what happened next. Did you come back next, or did someone say you have a choice to stay or go?
No, Jesus, I saw Jesus. He came out of a grove of trees and he walked over to me and he said that he loved me, not to be afraid, and that he'd always loved me. And that was my first clue that I was coming back, but it went over my head. And when he showed up, my brothers disappeared. So Jesus walked me over to this wooded glen, and there was a log laying on the ground. And I sat down on the log, and Jesus walked away, and there was another man sitting on the other side of the log, and that was God. And he started talking to me, and then he was like leaned over, and had a stick, and he was drawing in the dirt with a stick, and just, and at first it was just, chit chat. But then he looked at me and he said, what would you do if it was just me and you? And I was like, what? I didn't understand. And he said, what would you do if it was just me and you? I was like, the question didn't even make sense to me. I didn't understand it at all. So he said, well, come with me. And so we stood up and we walked a little bit further into the woods where there was a clearing. And he kind of waved his hand. And when he did that, the sky just opened up. And I could see the vastness of the universe. I saw this, sparkling stars and gas, spirally gases and spinning planets. But there was no people. There was no houses, no cars, no trees, no animals, nothing. It was just all this stuff. And I looked at him and I said, that's huge. And if it's just all of that and me and you would be tired of me after the first 10 minutes and you wouldn't like me anymore.
Oh, wow.
So I said, no, I don't think so. So he just threw his head back and he laughed. And when he did, he had the bluest eyes I've ever seen. They just sparkled. And he must have thought that was a really funny comment. And I thought, gosh, Sharon, who says no to God, So we went back and we sat down on the log again. And he asked me the third time, what would you do if it was just me and you? And then he said, no parents, no children, no husband, no friends, nobody, just me and you. And I don't know why I said this, because I've never read the Quran in my life. I've never seen it. I don't know anything about that tradition. But I said, God, your 100th name in the Quran is God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is in me. He said, yeah, that's right. And then I looked at this tree that was in front of me. It was a beautiful oak tree, real big, old oak tree. And I could see the detail of the bark, and I could see the roots beneath the ground and how they pulled the nutrients up and they fed the leaves, and the leaves clean the air, and we breathe the air. And so one thing is connected to another and everything is connected. And that was really important. And I said to God, I said, God, you made this tree. You are in this tree. So when I see this tree, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. And so then I started thinking about my parents, and I said, well, God, you made my parents. You are in my parents. So when I see my parents, I see you. He said, yes. And so I thought about my children, and I said the same thing, And then the next thing, I started thinking about certain people in my life who had been very cruel to me and hurt me. And I said, God, you made these people that hurt others and are mean and cruel. I said, you made them. You're in them. So when I see them, I see you. And he said, yeah, that's right. Then he said, now I have a question for you. I said, okay. And he said, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And of course, my normal answer to him would have been not much, because my whole life had been, people told me I was ugly, I was stupid, I was fat, I was this, I was that. So I didn't have a good opinion of myself at all. And so I said to him, I said to myself, if that's not something you tell God, the creator of everything, you just don't tell him that you're not, he made junk, you're not. So I said, you made me, you're in me. So when I look in the mirror, I see you. And he said, yeah, that's right. He was so happy. I was like, I felt like a little kid had just got an A on a test, that I answered the right question the right way. And he was so happy. But what he was putting in my mind and in my heart, and what he was trying to teach me, was that it doesn't matter what other people think. What matters is what he thinks, and that he loves me. Even though I'm an imperfect person, he loves me perfectly. And that love is what makes me perfect in his eyes. And he said he doesn't make junk, and he doesn't make mistakes. And so I wasn't a mistake. And that was so huge to me. It just was spinning in my head. It was just enormously huge because of things that had been said to me my whole adult life. So it was huge for me that he has a purpose and a reason for everything he does.
And that's like an amazing experience you had, and to me it's really beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you.
I'm curious. I'm sure someone else is curious. Two things. One, was this still the same Jesus that you saw as a child? Looked the same?
Looks the same. Only he was wearing a robe.
He was wearing a robe this time. Okay. And second of all, so all I got was God's description was blue eyes. Can you give us any more description?
He had short, curly black hair, and he had a beard. And he was older than Jesus, but he wasn't old. He wasn't a real, old guy. He was, and his eyes were the bluest blue you would ever see. And he was wearing a robe and sandals, and but his hair was, up to here. Jesus' hair was down to here. It was two totally different people, but yet I don't know how to explain it. They were two totally different entities, but yet very similar, very, very similar entities.
Right. That makes sense.
And the love was just huge for both of them. But it wasn't until I got back from my near-death experience that I realized that God, he was also that huge, loving, formless presence. And he decided to take on form to talk to me, to get his message across to me. And, he's the creator of everything. So he could appear as anything he chose. I mean, his essence is spirit, so he can be anything. Well, if he'd appeared to me as a goat with 3 heads or a burning bush, I would have took off running the other way. And there would not have been a conversation. So he appeared in a way that was inviting and felt warm and friendly, and I wasn't afraid. And he wanted a relationship. You can't have a relationship with someone you don't talk to. So if he'd appeared scary, we wouldn't have talked.
Do you think that there's any significance that you thought of that? I don't know if that was a quote or a line from the Quran.
I really don't know because I've never read the Quran. Now, I did talk to this was several years after my near-death experience. I talked to a Islamic professor. And he told me, he said there's only 99 names written in the Quran, and the 100th name is never spoken. It's too holy. And he said it's more of a concept than it is a name. It's, God's names are qualities that he has. He is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning, the end, the comforter, all these different names that we have for him, but they describe who he is, his personality. And he so what he was telling me is that name is not written in there. It is known in there. It's just not written in there because it's too holy to be spoken. And he was like, and you went and said it. And I'm like, I didn't know that's what I was saying. I really didn't know because I didn't know anything about it.
I'm confused. So what do you mean you went and said it? I mean, that quote is...
That's what he told me. That's the 100th name of God.
Oh.
And you're not supposed to say it.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't know that. That's what he told me anyway. But I didn't know. I'd never read the Quran. I'd never heard. I'd never talked to anybody that was Islamic. Nothing before that time. It just popped out of my mouth, and I don't know why it did. I was as shocked as anybody. I was like, "What? What did I just say?" Because I'd never, never picked up the book, didn't know anything about it. But I just said it, and God was like, "Yeah, that's right."
So you're having this experience. What happened to your body on Earth? I mean, were you out unconscious, or what was going on with your body?
I was dead.
You were clinically dead?
Yes, I was gone. I have now a right bundle branch block in my heart, and I have seizure disorder from the lightning. I was dead.
So I would assume
crumpled on the ground.
You were on the ground. Whoever was at home came out, saw you there, called the 911. They took you to the hospital, and that kind of deal.
I was married to somebody that was very abusive and refused medical treatment.
Oh, okay.
So it was a couple of days before he finally took me in, and the doctor was. I did go in, and I do have medical records to prove, but he didn't want to have to sit there and wait for me to. So that's what that happened.
Were you burned? Was your body burned?
My body was not burned, but there were tar marks on the concrete steps where I had been sitting. I did not have any entrance wounds or exit wounds, but they were able to see on because of the seizure activity and the right bundle branch block. I had never had that before. And the doctor said it was from the lightning strike.
Wow.
I still have seizures because of it.
So how did God bring you back to Earth? Did he tell you it was time to go, or?
No. We never had a conversation about that. I remember so many details about the experience. I just don't remember that part of it. So if there was an actual conversation about me coming back or staying, it probably wasn't a good one. Right. I probably wasn't a very nice person because I really wanted to stay.
Right.
It was so beautiful.
Right. Well, I think wanting to stay doesn't qualify you as not being nice. I mean, I think most people want to stay.
Well, he was probably like, "You're going to go back," and I was probably like, "No, I'm not." But here I am.
Oh, wow.
So
All right. So that was your second NDE. What happened?
Yes.
Your third one happened when you were undergoing surgery, correct?
Yes, I had a bowel blockage,
Okay.
and it was an emergency surgery. And during the what actually happened was the nurses told me after the fact that I had aspirated during the surgery and quit breathing. So, but what happened was during the surgery, I came out of my body, and I could see them working on me. They were leaned over. They had blue hats on and blue gloves on, and blue, like a gown or whatever they put over there. And I could see their hands inside of me. And I thought, oh, that is just gross. So I went to the corner of the room, like on the opposite corner of the room. And I'm sitting up there in the corner of the room, and I'm thinking, that's just really gross. I don't need to see. That's too much information for me. So there was it looked like an upside down whirlpool. And it was going up like this. And it was like rainbow colored or sparkly, different colors. And I thought, I'll just take an exit and go right up there. So I did. And I found myself back in heaven again, the same place I was at before.
Oh.
And I'm standing by this huge golden wall that was so tall, and was made of, like, it looked like cinder blocks, but they were pure gold cinder blocks. And they were just in the wall. I kept thinking, how am I going to jump that wall? I can't get up that wall. I kept jumping up and down. I couldn't get it. And if you walked just a few feet down, the gates were open, and I could hear, I could hear music playing. I heard dishes clanging. People were laughing and talking. Sounded like there was a party going on behind the wall. Well, as I looked out, I could see there's this meadow, and past the meadow to the left was the garden where I had been before. And there were all these people coming out of this garden. There were hundreds of people coming out of this garden. Well, as they were all coming out and walking through the meadow, there was this little tiny brown and white beagle puppy, and he was jumping at my feet and barking. So I leaned down and I was playing with him, and he would roll over for me to rub his belly. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're a little boy. If I rub your tummy, don't you pee on me? I said that. I was like, oh my God, who says that? So I'm rubbing this little puppy and playing with this puppy, and I'm watching these people pouring out of the garden. And I saw everybody that came out, they were all laughing and talking with each other. Everybody was happy, and everybody had their own special angel. Everyone had one, and they were wearing white robes with this blue sash that come across it. And I could tell the angels because they were taller and more illuminated than the people were. So they'd come out of the garden, and there were two Middle Eastern men that had the headpiece. I don't know what you call it. They look like sheiks, I guess. The robes and the head thing they were wearing. And they were talking to each other and laughing. And they went right into the city. And then there was another man who looked like he was from New York. And he still had his hard hat on, and he had jeans on, and he had this tool vest that had tools tucked down in there. And he walked past me, and he went into the city. And there was just hundreds of people, children and men and women, and of all races and colors and creeds and whatever. And then there was these two that I recognized. The younger of the two, he was the son of a friend of mine who had died years ago. And there was an older man walking with him, and I recognized him as this young man's father. And so they walked up to me, and I looked at them and I said, I know you. And they smiled at me and walked on into the city. Well, what was interesting about that was when did finally come back to my body, and I was hooked up to some kind of breathing machines and stuff. And when they realized that I was waking up, they took care of me, and I got back to my room. And on my phone was a message from a joint friend of ours that told me this woman's husband died that day while I was in surgery. And I said, I know, because I saw him, and he was with her son, and they were together. And, it was amazing.
Wow.
And when I told my daughter about the puppy, I told her about what was happening, the whole experience, and I mentioned the puppy. And she said, well, Mom, we had a neighbor that lived down the street from us who had beaten his beagle puppy to death, and we had to call the police on him. He was arrested. And I said, well, that beagle puppy was fine. He wasn't hurt. He was fine. He was just as cute as he could be. And so our pets do go to heaven. And that was able to comfort her. And I didn't even know about that until I told her about the beagle puppy.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. So, and then you had a fourth NDE that happened when you had a reaction to seizure medication, right?
Yes.
What happened with that one?
Well, it was quite different. I had this feeling of going up, up, up like a helium balloon. And I kept going up and up, like 3 levels, up, up, up. And I remember feeling like I was floating into space, going beyond the blue sky and going up. But it felt like a helium balloon. I just was rising up and up. And what I got into, what I guess was outer space, I don't know, but looked a lot like your back room that you have there. I was wrapped in this soft black velvet blanket. I felt cocooned and safe. And I could see myself inside the blanket, and I could see outside of the blanket. And I was just like in a fetal position. And I felt like a baby inside a womb, but this was a beautiful, soft, velvet encasement, blanket, I'm calling it, because I don't know what else to call it. And I could see the sparkling stars through the blanket. And I thought it was amusing, but I felt more safe inside the blanket. So that's where I wanted to be. And then it was like, I heard this conversation taking place, and God was huge. He was big. And it was like either he was talking to someone next to him about me, or he was talking to me about me. I don't know. I just heard this conversation, and it was about whether to come back or not. And he was saying, you just need rest. You're tired. You're depressed. Life is hard. But you need to think about this. Let's not be hasty. You need to just think about it. And I'm going to hold you here and just hold you, and you can rest and you can think about this. And that's what he did. And I wasn't afraid at all. I was exhausted, and he just held me there for a while. And then I came back, and the first thing, people were screaming in my ear that the doctor was in there. There were nurses everywhere. They had the lights on, and it was like, oh my God, it was so painful. The lights were so painful when I came back. I didn't even know what happened. It was like, really? Why did you have to bring me back? I didn't want to come back. It was so soft and cozy where I was at, and dark and beautiful. And I had always been afraid of the void because of being on the NDE groups and things and people talking about the void. So I was really afraid of it. I wasn't afraid of death, but I was afraid of going there. But that's where I went. And it wasn't scary to me, it was very peaceful and quiet and cozy and,
comforting.
very, very comforting. It really was. I realized that the void is nothing more than the birthplace of everything, or the beginning of everything, or a place of rest or waiting. Like you're here waiting for the next step. I mean, in my case, it was a step back. So
I have a comment and a question here. The first part is the comment. It says, "You are very pretty and I like your hair. Thanks for sharing your story." And then the question is, after your fascinating experience, did you change your point of view towards people and the world we are living in?
I did. I really did. When I came back, I was a whole different person, completely different. And my family thought I was crazy because I was walking 6 feet off the ground all the time. And I loved everything. I loved everyone. And you couldn't hurt me if you tried. And I called it being in the pink bubble because I didn't know what else to call it. I could see auras. I could see this golden, whatever it was that, around every living thing. It was the life force energy or whatever, around people and trees and flowers and birds and animals and whatever. I could just see this glow around everything. And I call that pink bubble. I was still like, had 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot here. And I had that oneness with God still. I mean, I guess you can't sit with him and see his face and not, come back different. Sure. And I did. And my family, they just thought I was crazy because they'd never seen me like that before. I was totally different. And I don't know how much of the lightning changed me at the cellular level. You're the doctor, you should know, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was, it was, and that lasted for a very long time until I finally came out of it. And then I was in shock because it was such a big difference from vibrating that high and that beautiful, loving, magnificent place, and then coming down here. It's like walking in half-dried cement up to your hips, walking uphill. That's how dense it is here versus heaven.
Right.
So it was a very stark reality from being there and living in that oneness for so long and then coming back. But it's taken me a lot of years to try and integrate it into my life. And what I try to do is just love people. See them where they are and love them right where they are as best as I can. And if the person and I really don't get along, I can love them from a distance. I love you. Have a good life. God bless you. Stay over there. Yeah. But I try very hard to watch what I say, because I know that words can make a person or break one. And so I'm very careful what I say. I'm very cognizant of what I say and how I say it can hurt someone. And I don't ever want to do that.
So you have written 3 books. Are any one of your books about your experiences? Or can you just briefly tell me what each of your 3 books are about?
A Song in the Wind is about my first 2 experiences.
Okay.
I'm currently writing a book about my 3rd and 4th. And I'm also writing a book about the Gray Eagle story. So that's coming out. My Whispers in the Wind is a poetic, it's a bunch of poetry that I wrote when I was in the pink bubble. And there's whimsical poems in there. There's native poems in there. There's various religious or not really religious, but spiritual poems. And I did a children's book called A Rose from Heaven, and it's beautifully. The illustrator did a wonderful job. Bethany Kerr is her name. She did great, and it's for children, so that and adults like it too. But it's about my near-death experience and what heaven is like, and angels and Jesus and God, and the little girl brings back a rose from heaven, and so
I want to encourage the audience to if you want to know more about Sharon's experiences, to check out the books, because unfortunately I only have so much time to have a conversation with Sharon due to editing. So I'm sure some of you people may be saying, why didn't you ask her this, or why didn't you ask her that? But like I said, I only have so much time. So if you want to go deeper into Sharon's experiences, then check out her books. I'm assuming your books are on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes, they're on Amazon. Mm-hmm.
Are you doing anything else with the public? For example, if they want to contact you, do you communicate with the public? Do you have a website or a Facebook page, or are you kind of more of a private person?
I have my personal page on Facebook. I have a Song in the Wind page, and I have an author page. And so everybody can friend me or text me or email me. I have a WordPress. Oh gosh, I can't think now.
Like a blog page or something?
Yeah, like a blog page. So everything goes on everything. So, and if they want to just, they can email me. I talk to people people call me on the phone, and I'm happy to talk with anybody anytime.
Well, that's great. So I guess they just find you, Sharon Milliman, on Facebook and kind of go from there?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Well, before we wrap it up here, is there one last message that you can give the audience?
When you have your life review, it's the little things that you see. It's not the great big things. It's little things. And it's the little things that mean so much. So it doesn't matter if you're doing dishes or doing laundry or cleaning up after the cat or whatever it is. If you do it with love, that is so huge, so huge. And that's what moves mountains in heaven. And it's not talking to 1,000 people in an amphitheater. It's serving the popcorn at the amphitheater. That's what's important, and doing it with love, because that's what really matters.
Thank you. Thank you for that message. And thank you for being a guest. I really, really appreciate it. I wish you massive success with your books and even your new book when it comes out. And when your new book comes out, let's get back together and talk about your new book. And I want to hear more about the ghosts in that house that you had.
I'd love to tell you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Sharon, well, you have a wonderful evening.
I will. You too.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.